In this tutorial, we're going to light a nighttime scene using a blueprint sky sphere. This blueprint sky sphere comes standard with Unreal Engine 4, so you won't have to create any custom content other than just create a project and you'll have access to the blueprint sky sphere. This tutorial is broken down into two parts. In the first tutorial, we're going to focus on creating this nighttime scene with a starry sky. In the second tutorial, we're going to create a nighttime scene and light it with a moon sky. There are a lot of things covered in both of these tutorials, so let's go ahead and get started. And we're going to focus on first lighting a nighttime scene with a starry sky that you see here. Now we are going to be working within the constraints of the blueprint sky sphere. This means that we can only have a starry sky, or we can have a moon, but we can't have stars. If you want something more custom that maybe integrates both or has some sort of dynamic changes or animated parts within the sky sphere, then that would require you to set up your own custom material. So we're going to be working within the limitations of the given sky sphere, yet we can still have a lot of variety and customization. To get access to the blueprint sky sphere, there are two options. We're going to cover first one in this tutorial, and then I'm going to cover the manual way in the second tutorial. So the first way is to go to File, New Level, and choose Default. This gives you a scene that already has a blueprint sky sphere inserted into the map. You have a direction light and atmospheric fog that are all connected to work together with the blueprint sky sphere. So what this means that if you take the directional light and begin to change the angle and try to light the scene a little differently, it works with the blueprint sky sphere and the way they are connected. And it adjusts colors of the blueprint sky sphere. It also has a sun disk that positions a sun right inside the blueprint sky sphere, depending on the direction, the angle of the directional light. And it's not updating in real time because you have to select the sky sphere and refresh material. Atmospheric fog is also connected and linked with the directional light, so it gives a bit of atmosphere depending on the properties set up here. The blueprint sky sphere itself has a set of options that you can change of how your sky sphere, the sky material, looks. So here we have sun brightness, cloud speed, cloud opacity, and star brightness. There are a few other options that we can change here, and we'll go through most of them in the tutorial. So in this first tutorial, we're going to use this default scene and light for nighttime. So the option is to create your environment using this default level and construct it right in here, and then use the blueprint sky sphere and light your level. And that's what we're going to do in this tutorial. And in the next tutorial, in the second moon sky, we're going to insert the blueprint, directional light, and all of these actors ourselves, link them up, and make them work together. This way you'll learn a different workflow, a different method, and pick up a few additional tips that are not covered in the first tutorial. So I already have a scene constructed inside this default level. It contains static meshes, a water plane, and a water material from starter content, which we covered how to do in the previous tutorial, a basic landscape, and some BSP brushes. Everything else, the blueprint sky sphere, atmospheric fog, directional light, skylight, reflection capture, player start, were all from the default level. So no lighting has been changed other than constructing the scene. Oh, I also have a mannequin inserted for scale reference. So you can either construct your map inside this default level, or just open the default level and use it to follow along with the tutorial without a scene constructed. The first thing we're going to do is remove the sun disk from the sky sphere, because we want a completely starry sky. So select the blueprint sky sphere, and in the details panel, set sun brightness to 0. Now to get the starry sky, which is coded into the blueprint sky sphere, we need to select that directional light and make sure it's pointing up. So we're going to go into rotation, set X to 0, Y to 90, and Z to 0. This will point the directional light straight up. Now select the blueprint sky sphere and let's refresh material. And we now see our stars. Our next step is we want to control how dark it gets in our environment. Right now, if we take a look at the ground, and then we take a look at the sky, the exposure of this level is out of control. So we want to insert a post-process volume and control our auto exposure, eye adaptation, to expose for nighttime. So let's go to volumes, scroll down, and insert post-process volume into the level. Select it, and we want to make sure this post-process volume is universal. This means that no matter where you are in the level, it will apply this post-process everywhere, so you don't have to be inside this volume. Let's go to search and type in unbound and enable infinite extent unbound. Now with the post-process volume still selected, let's scroll down and we want to find auto exposure, and it's right here. Enable minimum and maximum brightness, and we're going to set minimum brightness to 0.4 and maximum brightness to 0.5. We don't want a lot of change between auto exposure levels, so we're going to clamp them down. You want to enter these values based on your environment. So kind of play around, see what you get. Alright, now we're beginning to get somewhere. Let's go ahead and quickly save our level. Now let's adjust cloud and sky color. Select the blueprint sky, and we want to disable colors determined by sun. If we leave this on by default, we won't be able to change these 4 properties. Nothing is affected. So we want to disable this property, which will change the sky, but it will enable us to change these 4 colors. Zenith color is when you are looking straight up. Then we have horizon color, is when you're looking straight ahead. Then of course you can change your cloud color and then overall color. So I already have these values picked out, and here they are. For zenith color, I'm going to use this. So of course you want to adjust them to your scene. So I'm going to look up, I'm just going to paste this in. Click OK. Then we have horizon color. So we want to look straight ahead. Let's go to horizon color, and I'm going to paste this in. Next we have cloud color. And it's beginning to look a lot better. And then last we have overall color. Overall color, if you're using black and white values, will work like a visibility scale. It will just adjust the visibility of your entire sky. Or you can add a slight hue to the entire sky by adding color. I kept it at default at white. Next we want to adjust directional light intensity. All we did was point our directional light up. But if we take a look at the bottom of the world, it is still influencing and lighting up due to the position and the angle of the directional light. So we want to remove this. And the way to do this is to decrease the light intensity of the directional light to a very low value. If we change it to 0, it will not work. So I'm going to change this to 0.0001. Also, if you try to disable Effect World, this will not work, because the directional light and the sky sphere are working together. So by turning down the intensity to a very low value, works. And now if we take a look at the bottom again, that issue will be fixed. Now select the blueprint sky sphere and let's adjust cloud speed, cloud opacity, and star brightness. So I'm going to change cloud speed by how fast the clouds move, and you have to enable real time to see it in the viewport. I'm going to keep it at 2. For cloud opacity, I'm going to change it to 0.35. And we may have to build lighting to see more accurate representation of everything that's happening in that scene, because we haven't done that yet. And for star brightness, I'm going to increase it to 0.25. Now, the way that I'm adjusting all these values, including when we get to our skylight, is I'm looking at the monitor and I'm able to see how everything is being changed a lot better. So what you may see in the video, due to the compression of the recording, you may not see exactly what's happening, because you'll be able to see it better on the monitor and you may get not very accurate results by looking at the video. So just keep that in mind when you are viewing this, because the results might look too dark. So before we continue, let me insert a Lightmass importance volume and build lighting to establish where we're at lighting wise. So I'm going to go to volumes and insert Lightmass importance volume. I'm going to switch to unlit mode, Alt 3. And just scale this volume to surround the important area where I want to focus my lighting in. Just drag it here, and let me increase a little bit more this way. And that looks pretty good. Let me scale a little bit so it touches the water. Here we go. Let's go back and switch to lit mode, Alt 4, and I'm going to build lighting on preview. Let's go ahead and take a look. Here is our base nighttime lighting. And of course, it's too dark. Since we won't be using a directional light to light our scene, we need to use other light actors. This will include a skylight, world settings, environment color, this property right here, post-process auto exposure, which we already set, and additional artificial lights to help sell our scene. This includes spotlights or point lights. But spotlights and point lights don't actually contribute to nighttime setting, and a skylight is what we'll be using for nighttime lighting. Let's go ahead and select our skylight, and we want to change mobility to stationary. Source type will be set to SLS capture scene, which means that the skylight will be using the sky sphere to bounce light from the sky back into our environment, which will give us the most accurate representation of the lighting. You could choose SLS specified cube map. This means that you have to have an HDRI texture cube map to use to light the scene from the texture image instead of the sky sphere. So to show you what this looks like, I have a few HDRI texture cube maps. So I'm going to input this into the cube map property. I'm going to choose this night scene, and I'm going to turn down the intensity to, let's say, 0.5. It's too bright, but I'm going to keep it at here so you can see it as an example. The problem with using a cube map texture is lighting from the cube map is affecting interiors as well. And it gives the same value for interiors and exteriors. So this doesn't work in our case. And this is better used for showcasing your static meshes or your environments, but for lighting wise, it doesn't really work that well. So we're going to switch it back to SLS capture scene. Actually, let me go ahead and reset this and switch it back. So our skylight is influencing our scene right now, but it's not strong enough. We need to increase the intensity and indirect lighting intensity to get more lighting from the sky sphere. So select the skylight, and in the details panel, we're going to increase the intensity to 2 and change indirect lighting intensity to 15. To see the results, we're going to need to bake our lights. So let's go ahead and hit build. Now again, the results might be very difficult to see due to the compression of the video, but on the monitor and in-game I can see the changes. And I can see that it's a little bit brighter than it was before. And actually, these are the values that I ended up using in the end. But for the clarity of the video, I am going to increase the intensity to 4 and indirect lighting intensity to 40 and build again, just so you can see the results better. So you'll have to work with these two values and build your lighting to find what looks good for your environment, for your scene. So let me go ahead and build lighting, and I'm going to show you the comparison between all three changes. So here we are. The skylight is lighting I've seen better. Again, these are not the values that I would use. As I'm looking at this on the monitor, they're way too intense. So here are the values that we started from. These are the default skylight values. Here's increased intensity of 2 and indirect light intensity of 15. And this is what I ended up using in the scene. And here are the increased values to show you as an example so you can see it better. So begin to change these two values and build your lights until you get a very nice diffused nighttime lighting that matches your environment. So I'm going to keep this intensity values just for better clarity of the tutorial. And as I'm looking at this, I want to brighten everything up just a little bit more. I could go in and begin to increase more intensity and indirect light intensity of the skylight, but instead I want to give more of a constant color everywhere by using world settings. You can find it here, window, world settings. And under Lightmass settings, we're going to adjust environment color. This will give a constant color to the entire scene. Now you want to be very careful of using this as the lighting doesn't get bounced as indirect lighting, and it causes incorrect reflection capture brightness. So there are some limitations of using environment color, but we can still use it to our advantage. So click on the environment color and choose to give the constant color to your entire scene. You won't see any changes in the viewport because we'll need to bake lights. Now I already tested and I know the values that I ended up using, so I'm just gonna go ahead and copy and paste this to get the right color. Let's go ahead and build our lights and see what the scene looks like. Here we are. Now let me show you the before and after. Here's without environment color, and here's with added environment color. You can see a constant color was added to the entire scene. So these are the three values that you want to change for a nighttime scene that uses static lighting: world settings, environment color, and skylight intensity, and indirect lighting intensity. Now before we continue, I am going to change the values to what I have in the final scene. Since we intensified them for the video, what we have now is a bit too strong. So I'm just going to bring them down. I'm going to change world settings, environment color, and put it back to what I had before in my original scene. Makes it a little darker. And for skylight, I'm going to bring the intensity down to 2 and indirect light intensity to 15. Again, I found these values by constantly changing them and baking lighting, then looking in the scene and jumping into the game to see what it looks like. And remember, you can always go back and change post-process auto exposure. So if you want to brighten this up a little bit, select post-process, scroll down, and adjust minimum brightness and maximum brightness. So if I wanted this to be a little brighter, I would just change these values to adjust for nighttime. Next, I want to introduce some artificial lighting. Nighttime scene looks fine and all, but we need some sort of contrast in the scene, and I'm going to do this by adding a spotlight to these street lights. I have just a couple in the scene, so I'm gonna insert one, adjust it, and then just duplicate it across. So let's go to lights, spotlight, and just drag it up and position it right at the source. Go ahead and lower this camera speed so we can adjust it better. go ahead and lower our grid. And bring it up. And we're also going to rotate it. With the spotlight selected, let's go to details and adjust some properties. I'm gonna bring back our lit mode, Alt-4. Going to adjust intensity to 14,000. And I already know these values, so you don't have to sit there and watch me tweak them in real time. So this just speeds up the process, so you don't have to watch me do it. For light color, I'm gonna go with a little bit of yellow. So I'm just gonna copy and paste this RGB value in here. So what I'm doing is we have blue sky, and I want some complementary color in the scene by introducing some yellow. So we have cool versus warm lighting. For inner cone, I'm gonna adjust this to 50. And for outer cone, I'll adjust it to 75. And last part we want to adjust is we're going to use temperature and make this light a bit warmer. So I'm gonna bring it down to 5500. So here's what we have so far. I'm gonna take this light and duplicate it for the other two light posts. The way I'm duplicating an object is select it, hold down Alt, left click hold and drag. And then if you want to move your object and lock the camera as you move it, hold down Shift, left click hold and drag. This will move the object and camera at the same time, so you can move and position the object better. So I'm gonna quickly position these two spotlights at the light posts. Press Alt-4 to get back into lit mode, and G for game mode to see what the lighting situation looks like. Let's go ahead and bake our lights again. Let's add some atmosphere into the scene with fog. We currently have atmospheric fog, but it's not doing anything because it's relying on the directional light to work together. So we might as well either delete this or disable visibility. I'm going to disable visibility, but in the final scene, we might want to go ahead and delete this. And we are going to insert exponential height fog. So let's go to visual effects and insert exponential height fog into our level. So let's adjust some properties. Select the fog actor, and we want to increase fog density to 0.35. We want to change fog in scattering color to something that fits our scene. I have a value that I already tested, so I'm going to go ahead and paste this in. And it's a darker blue value. We're going to decrease fog max opacity to 0.5. And we're going to adjust start distance to 250. So that looks pretty good already. If you want to see the before and after, what the fog looks like, scroll down and disable visible. Next, we want to enable volumetric fog. One value that we're going to change is adjust extension scale. We're going to change it to 0.5. This sets how much the fog absorbs light, and it makes it more misty. So a value of 1, it makes it a bit more dense by absorbing more light. Let's bring it back down to 0.5. So at this stage, the scene is pretty much done, but it doesn't look as good as we want it to. The few things that we do need to change is post-process. We need to adjust colors, tweak saturation, contrast, and just make the scene better. This is a good start, but it's not the end. So by adjusting post-process, specifically color grading, these options right here, we'll be able to change the colors of the scene and how it looks. We're going to do this in 2 stages. First, we're going to create a color lookup table, and then we're going to come back into post-process and adjust color grading options here. First, we'll create a color lookup table. This is a single image that contains your scene's color information, and then we'll use that texture and we'll input it into the global setting of color grading. right in here. And it will use that information and display what our scene looks like. You can create a color lookup table inside Photoshop. And to do this, we first have to take a screenshot inside Unreal Engine 4 of what your scene currently looks like. So let's go ahead, press G. And actually, before we take a screenshot, let's go ahead and build our lights. Now press G for game mode, F11 for full view. Position the camera and the angle where you want. We get a full range of what the environment looks like. And then press F9 to take a screenshot. The screenshot will be saved inside the project folder, saved, screenshots, Windows. And here's the screenshot we just took. Now let's go ahead and open this screenshot inside Photoshop. Before we make any adjustments, we need to have an LUT texture that we can save our adjusted information onto. To get this LUT texture, search for Unreal Engine 4 color grading and go to this link using lookup tables. It will be on docs, unrealengine.com website. And if you scroll down, you can download it right here, LUT texture example. Right click and save link as. This will be saved as a PNG texture. Then open this PNG texture in Photoshop. It will look like this. Take this LUT and drag it into the screenshot that you opened up. And I'm just going to position it right here at the very top. Where you place it doesn't matter. So we have our screenshot, we have our LUT texture, and now you can begin adjusting this image using adjustment layers. Any of these right here. So you can add hue saturation, you can adjust levels, and begin to change how you would want your environment to look. You can add multiple adjustment layers and pretty much change everything about the scene. I already made the adjustments, so I'm just going to go ahead and open up what I have to show you. So this is the final LUT of what I want this image to look like. So I'm just going to go inside this folder. I'm going to disable everything. So this is what we started with. I added levels, brightness and contrast, and color balance. And here's the LUT. You have to make sure that this LUT is below all the adjustment layers. This way it captures the information you adjusted. Now we want to save this LUT and import it into Unreal Engine 4. So what I'm going to do is hold Control and left click on the layer for the LUT. This will marquee select just the LUT texture. Then I'm going to go to Image, Crop. So it crops just to the LUT texture. Just to show you what the size is, it's 256 by 16. And now we want to go to File, Save As. I'm going to save it as a PNG and name it LUT Nighttime Stars and click Save. For PNG options, I'm going to select None. Click OK. Let's import our LUT. I'm going to navigate into Textures folder, inside LUT folder, and we're going to import it in here. You can import it anywhere you want. I just have this set up for better organization. I already have 3 in here, but ignore them. Going to hit import and navigate where we saved our LUT. Once it's imported, double click to open texture editor. 2 properties we want to make sure to check is under texture group, select color lookup table, and make sure that MIP gen settings are set to no MIP maps. Click save, and now we can close this. Now select post process volume, and under global we want to enable color grading LUT, select the imported LUT, and then use it inside this input box. And now we will use that color lookup table to change the colors and the look of the scene based on what we adjusted inside Photoshop. Now, color lookup tables are great, but there's one very important thing you need to know. Since Unreal Engine 4.16, color lookup tables are beginning to be moved away from. This means that you should be relying less and less of using color lookup tables to change the colors and color grading of your scene, and rely more on the options that are given to you inside color grading in the post-process volume. these options right here. So it is recommended now that you no longer rely on color lookup tables due to inconsistencies between LDR and HDR displays, and that you use the color grading options inside Unreal Engine 4. To read a bit more about it, if you search for Unreal Engine 4 color grading, go to this first link, color grading and filmic tone mapper, and you can read this document for a little bit more information. And here in the bottom is where Epic recommends that instead of using lookup tables, you begin to move away from them and use color grading properties in the post-process volume. This way your scene will be consistent on all output displays. So with that said, what I did was I used the color lookup table as a way to give me a target to aim for, or what I want my scene to look like. And then I'm going to disable color lookup table, and then I'm going to use and adjust color grading settings to get the same adjustments. So I already tested these and I know the values, so I'm gonna go ahead and quickly input them to get the same colors that we had from the color lookup table. So on the global, I'm going to enable saturation, contrast, gamma, gain, and offset. Let's go ahead and open these up. For saturation, I'm going to input 1.2 and remove a bit of blue. For contrast, I'm going to use 1.1. For gamma, I'm going to increase it to 1.2, make it a little brighter, and then remove red and green, essentially adding blue or leaving more blue in the scene. You can use these color wheels to kind of push this out. I have a value that I already tested, so it's 1.16 for red and the green. For gain, I'm going to increase to 1.9 and decrease or add more blue, 1.67 and 1.67. Now it's beginning to get there what we had in LUT. And for the offset, I'm going to decrease this to minus 0.01 to get the shadows a bit darker. So in order to understand what gamma, gain, and offset are, gamma are your midtones, gain are your highlights, and offset are your shadows. So this way you can go in and begin to adjust these just like you would in Photoshop by adjusting your highlights, adjusting your midtones, and adjusting your shadows. And one more thing we need to do is adjust midtones here. So I have saturation. For saturation, I'm going to increase this to 1.15, and I also adjusted gain, which are your highlights. So we are essentially adjusting our midtones, and then within the midtone range, we're adjusting the higher end, the highlights of our midtones. And here I adjusted this to 1.25. So here we have the scene that is pretty much identical to what we had in the color lookup table, but now it will be more consistent across LDR and HDR displays. So here's our final scene for nighttime star sky using Blueprint Skysphere. In the second tutorial, we're going to light the same scene for nighttime by using moon sky. And this is the result that we're going to achieve in the next tutorial.